A proper crime wave.
Where's me tools?
Where's me shed?
And where's me glasses? Oh, they're on me head.
So before we get started, by the way, again, thank you to Netflix for letting us do this screening tonight. Thank you guys for being here. Those are the actual puppets from the film.
That's
They
right.
are, yes, they are. That's the scale we work with, yeah.
They're just like very expensive action figures, really.
Those will be on display in the lobby after this screening for people to take more close-up pictures. So I have a million questions for you guys. I like throwing this one at the beginning, which is if someone is, besides this movie, if someone has never seen anything you've worked on, what is the first thing you'd like them watching and why?
Which film? Oh, you...
Just Wallace and Gromit ones, you mean?
Oh, no, you could, anything.
Okay.
I'd go for Wrong Trousers myself.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of quintessentially kind of Aardman and Wallace and Gromit and an amazing film. I did have nothing to do with it, so I feel very happy saying that.
Just to add to that, and unfortunately it's another film I've made, but is Creature Comforts. Because there's something, thank you, it's very essentially, there's something about, that's very primal about the use of clay and the great things about clay animation and character, and the simplicity of it all.
I want to read this question so I do it right. A lot of people think that Feathers McGraw is one of animation's best villains. So how would he fare against Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber from Die Hard?
I think he might give him a run for his money, you know.
You could, yeah.
We actually referenced Hans Gruber falling off the building. There's a shot in this where Gromit falls at the end. We referenced it just because it's kind of an iconic film of someone falling. And it's not the same, but it was just something we needed to look at so that, you know, we didn't mess it up and copy it. But, you know. And I don't know whether it's true, but I heard a story that they didn't tell Alan Rickman they were going to drop him, which is why he has that amazing expression when he falls.
I think I've heard that, but I don't know what's true at this point, you know.
And we didn't tell Gromit either. So.
No.
What will it take to get a Wallace and Gromit Chicken Run crossover?
Quite a lot, I think.
Yeah. A lot, yeah. You're right.
Is it something that you've actually ever thought about or, you know, not at all?
We tend to keep the worlds separate, you know, and we have discussed it. You know, I think while making Chicken Run, we talked about should there be any reference to Wallace and Gromit, you know, like them going past in the distance or something on the bike or something like that. But, I mean, there is a little Easter egg in the end of Dawn of the Nugget, which we didn't put in, but the crew on Chicken Run put it in, of a little Feathers McGraw.
In the final shot.
In the very final shot.
And like in this film, we got the farmer from Shaun the Sheep has a little cameo, which... but that's slightly different because the Shaun the Sheep world evolved from the world of Wallace and Gromit. Although we do keep Shaun from Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep, the design is subtly different. We do very purposefully keep them separate.
So when they do crossover, it's a joke, really. Yeah.
This movie touches on technology and whether or not too much technology is bad. I have been asking this of filmmakers all over the place, which is, what are your thoughts on AI and in Hollywood, you know, in movie making? Does it concern you? Do you think that there's a way to use it? I'm just curious your thoughts.
Well, I mean, it is thematically central to our film, and when we started working on it, AI was around, and it was, but the speed at which, you know, technology advances is kind of exponential. So our film coming out and AI being such a massively hot topic in the creative arts and especially in Hollywood, it kind of is more luck than judgment. But I think for us, the quintessential process of stop motion is craft-based. It's about people and it's about being hands-on. And the actual core method of making the films that we do require people and artists. And, you know, you can even see the thumbprints of our animators on the clay faces of the characters. And that human touch is absolutely essential. We can't say we haven't used AI, because if you use a smartphone of any kind, you use AI in some form. So you have to be very careful about saying you haven't used AI. But we haven't used AI for voice, for image creation, or for any of the core creative methods used in the film. And I think that's a very important distinction to make.
Yeah, that's
and we wouldn't.
key.
And I don't think you could, to make the kind of films we make.
That's very key to our values on this. Yeah.
What was it like for you guys when the reports came out that there was like you were going to run out of clay and everyone went crazy? You know what I mean? Because it's the core of your business. So can you sort of address that a little bit or talk about it?
Yeah, it's kind of a half truth in it. I think it was said as a joke by Sam Fell, who directed Dawn of the Nugget, Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, that it's the sort of thing Sam comes out with. But it got taken up in the press and stuff. And
I remember reading about it and being like, what the F? This needs to be rectified.
But it was kind of grounded slightly in truth.
Yeah.
There was going to be the company that makes the particular kind of modeling clay that we use was winding up, but there's been a resurrection and actually we're going to be fine. So we were delighted that everybody was so worried for us. But don't worry, everybody, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things, though, if we look at the puppets that you used in the film, it's not just clay anymore. There's more to it. Can you sort of tell the audience and everyone watching what is actually the puppets are made of?
Yeah.
Sure. Do you want to?
I mean, it is essentially an armature inside, metal skeleton with ball and socket joints. But his torso has always been something solid, in this case, silicon with a solid core. But it's just with so many animators working on the film, 35 animators, is a way of keeping the style consistent and saves a lot of time. The characters have to go into pit stop after every shot, and it just saves a lot of modeling time for the animator. So the sleeves are made of silicone on the outside, and the pants are made of silicone as well. And it just means saves a lot of time resculpting every shot.
But the parts which require sort of the most expressive performance, the hands and the heads of Wallace and Gromit in particular, have always been clay and are always clay because we haven't figured out a way to do it differently and keep them looking right and performing in the same way.
Yeah, and also silicon doesn't serve every purpose. So sometimes Wallace's arms are all clay, sometimes his trousers are clay, sometimes the whole of Gromit is clay, but it just varies according to, it's a production issue really, how to keep the production going at speed really.
But also, these are material technologies that are advancing, and we use it if it works, and if it doesn't work, we kind of go back to the old way. And I think it's using the best tool for the job really.
And we have to kind of be careful not to that it gets too sophisticated, because there's a certain naivety, and I guess that's the charm that people seem to like, is the fact that it is clay. So we don't want it to become the problem with silicon. You can start animating very smoothly because it's so controllable, and we don't want to lose that edge. So it's a balance, a bit like technology, really.
I think you said to me when we were backstage that Feathers is a lot of clay. Or am I wrong?
Yeah. So Feathers here, all of the black part of him is modeling clay, and his nose is resin. His eyes are the glass ends of needlework pins, and we buy about 1,000 of them, and we find pairs that match so they're perfectly spherical and the same size, and then those pairs are partnered for life, and they become Feathers' eyes, and then his legs are silicone. But apart from that, the white bit on him is resin, because you need something to grab onto. But otherwise, he's clay.
And his glove that's sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I've just realised something. Yeah. We've brought a chicken, and
damn, where's that penguin?
We should have brought Feathers. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. He always catches us out the whole time.
Yeah.
So one of the things, switching to something completely different, one of the things about movies and TV is that often people find things to criticize, or not everyone likes something. So what the hell is it like for the two of you? The movie is still at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes after 102 reviews. This does not happen. I agree. So what is it like for the two of you?
I've never known anything different. So for me, it's great. It's my first feature. It is quite extraordinary. I mean, we're hearing stories of, great films that don't get this response from reviewers. And so it's kind of, kind of bit of a pinch me kind of thing. You
even start getting a bit nervous to look on the site in case it's gone down. But there's only one way it can go.
That's right. It can only get worse from here.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very rare what's going on in terms of everyone liking it. And I'm just saying congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
The next part of this is, what does it mean to have so many critic organizations and so many people singling out the film as just being one of the best of the year, whether it be the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice? I'm sure it's going to be nominated for an Oscar. Like, what does this all mean to you?
Yeah, and we don't want to count our chickens either, so to speak. One can't assume that will happen. But thank you. It's nice.
It is quite an extraordinary feeling, just getting the nomination in itself, especially in a really strong year. And I have to say, it's a mega year for animated features this year, and we spend a long time in a dark hole making these films. And so when we come out for daylight and share it with people and it is warmly received, it's just wonderful. It's really, really heartwarming.
Yeah, you can you create a joke like 4 years ago, or a number of jokes, and you kind of, in the process, you get so close to it, or you kind of start forgetting if it's funny or
They're
not.
definitely not funny after 4 years.
Yeah, so and you start cutting them out or changing them, and then you see it with your first audience, and you suddenly think,
it was funny. Glad we kept that.
I forgot that was funny.
I have an individual question for you. When did you realize these characters really meant a lot to a lot of people?
Yeah, it's a good one. I guess when did I first notice? I don't know. I mean, actually, one of the first, I don't know if people remember Spike and Mike's Festival of Animation. A lot of people first saw our work over here in that festival.
Wasn't it Creature Comforts that was in that?
Yeah, Creature Comforts, and then the Grand Day Out the same year, and The Wrong Trousers. And I remember then that was the first ever autograph I ever signed, was at that festival, and so that really put the films on people's radar. And but yeah, I guess it was when we first started getting nominated for things and for awards and getting feedback from TV screenings, I remember before the internet, getting really moving letters from people, that meant, like Creature Comforts. I remember a lady writing, she'd been through a terrible divorce and what have you. She said, I'd forgotten how to smile and to laugh, and thank you, sort of thing, for bringing it back.
We should tell the younger members of the audience, the kids that are right here, people sometimes used to write letters with pens.
Yeah, not just like A, B, C, like whole long strings of words.
Yeah, it was very popular for a little while, hundreds of years. It's gone now, So someone on my staff asked this question, which is, where's Fluffles?
Oh.
Somebody asked that the other day, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great sequel idea. Thank you.
Was it something though? Like, did you debate?
Well, we never really got much response about Fluffles, to be honest. So it's nice that people are clocking Fluffles. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read this question also because I want to make sure I say it right. Which is, I want to bring up Peter Sallis, the original voice of Wallace. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what it was like first discovering Peter and realizing he's the voice? And then part two of that is trying to find someone to, I don't want to say replace, but, be able to do the voice.
Yeah, well, the way it started, I mean, he was my first choice, really. I was a student at the National Film and TV School we had about £50, 50 quid, 50 quid to pay an artist, an actor, to be in your film, and I wrote to him. He was very famous in the UK on a series called Last of the Summer Wine, about 3 old men getting up to all sorts of hijinks in the countryside. And he was like a mild-mannered Northern English character. And I wrote to him thinking he had a Northern accent, which is where I'm from the north of England. And he didn't write back. He sent me an old cassette that he'd recorded in his living room on his little player. And in that I discovered he had quite a posh kind of London accent. And I remember I think I've still got the tape somewhere where he goes, "Hello, Nick. Peter here. I wondered if this is what..." He was called Jerry, not Wallace, actually, in that very first script. "I thought this might be what Jerry sounds like." And he read the whole script, about 20 pages. And I loved it. But I was like, oh, boy, he doesn't have a Northern accent. But it worked fine, so... And he came to the film school, recorded for a day, and then it took me 7 years to make the film, because you have to record the voice first. Sure. And he had this story about how he got a phone call from me, from this little voice on the phone 7 years later, saying, "I've finished it." And he thought, I can't remember who that is or what he's talking about. But it was a grand day out, yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about, it was Ben Whitehead that took over for the role. What was it about Ben? How challenging was it to find, someone to take over?
Yeah, I mean, it was, obviously it was really sad losing Peter. But Ben was just a gift put on our laps, really, wasn't he, that was already there. Ben had come on to Curse of the Were-Rabbit to do a background voice. And he often stepped in to read in with artists when Peter couldn't turn up. So he read the script with Helena Bonham Carter and Ralph Fiennes, and we discovered that he could do a really excellent Wallace voice. And then you carried on working with him.
Yeah, so he essentially became Peter's understudy, and he would do the jobs that Peter couldn't or didn't want to do. So in the early days of console games, we had a PlayStation 1 game, and Peter didn't fancy doing that. And so Ben did those, and it was a really great training ground, and they knew each other, and Ben had Peter's blessing, really. And so so for us, we've worked with Ben for a long time, but to the outside world, he's kind of the brand new face or the voice of Wallace. And to begin with, not always perfect, but over the years, and it's worth saying that Ben is Ben and Peter was Peter. While we wanted Wallace's voice to be as similar as possible, there are times when it's not Peter. Clearly, it is Ben. But for him to be able to perform and to be the actor we needed him to be, we needed him to bring himself to it. But what he found was the heart and soul of the character of Wallace, which Peter had established, and managed to kind of carry that torch forwards. And we're really proud of what he's done on the film. And I hope you all agree that his Wallace is up there with what the standard that Peter established.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you've answered this 1,000 times, and here's 1,001. Why so long since the last movie?
Yeah, Nick, why?
Yeah, yeah. Well, to us, it hasn't seemed so long because we've been up to all sorts of things. Also made a Matter of Loaf and Death since Were-Rabbit, and we've been busy on all kinds of other stuff. And writing a film takes ages.
Yeah. I mean, there's a practical element of it, which is that Aardman is a relatively large studio, but really quite small in sort of global terms, and we can only do one big project at a time. And so when you've got kind of other feature films stacked up, you kind of have to wait your turn. So Chicken Run 2 was held up by COVID quite a lot, kept getting delayed, which actually gave us a rare thing in a feature film, is that we had time to develop the idea and storyboard, do many more versions of the story. We actually knew what Act 3 was before we started filming, which has never happened before.
Yeah. Hence the 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, right. But to go back to your question, I think you were kicking the idea around sort of back on Were-Rabbit times.
Oh, yeah. It was the idea of Wallace inventing a smart gnome, to help Gromit in the garden, was an idea back on. I had that while making Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and I kicked the idea around for quite a few years on and off, but it was always like lacking something. It was a half-hour idea back then as well, as in all Wallace and Gromit, there needs to be some kind of sinister, motivated villain. And it seems obvious now that Feathers should be there, but it was a very late-breaking idea about 5 years ago. I just suddenly thought Feathers is just perfect for this role, and it was a script solution rather than it wasn't a kind of an effort to exploit more of Feathers. He was late-breaking into the idea.
I'm always curious. So when you guys were working on the story, getting this thing off the ground, what were some of the big changes that happened that ended up not in the finished film? Was there any big thing that you were like, oh, this is just not working, we're going to have to cut this out?
There's always lots of those kind of things.
Yeah. Remember the Bangers and Mash-O-Mash?
Yeah, we had a Bangers and Mash-O-Matic.
Do you know Bangers and Mash? It's like sausage and potatoes. Mashed potatoes. Applause. Traditional British food, yeah. And anyway, there was in the breakfast scene, there was going to be this like Gatling, a Gatling gun, like a old-fashioned machine gun, but it was going to fire
strings of sausages going in
and fire big dollops of mash.
It was going to assault the postman.
The mash, that's right. The mash would spin round and the sausages went into it. And that was quite good fun.
It was really funny, but it just didn't fit in the sequence.
Nah.
And we had a whole thing with Gromit becoming a sleuth, going to the library, looking through microfiche kind of film and reference library, doing his, and it was a great sequence, but it just didn't work. So gone.
I want to do a follow-up to this, which is, were there any sequences that you came up with that the animation team was like, this is going to be impossible, so this can't be in the movie?
Well,
they don't have any say.
No, no. So I was an animator on Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I was the lead animator of Wallace and Gromit, and I did quite a lot of animation of the actual Were-Rabbit. And when Nick and Steve Box, who directed that, when we were in development, said we want the Were-Rabbit to have actual fur, we literally laughed in their faces and said that's impossible, and they went. not listening, and we made it happen. And so having those challenges are really, it's a wonderful thing when you're, and our team did the same thing on this. When we said at the end we want Act 3 to be on barges on the water and end on a big set piece on an aqueduct, they were kind of like, no. and then we kind of just encouraged them, and they kind of stepped up to the mark and made it kind of better than we expected. So
what do you think was the toughest shot in this film? Was there one that no animator wanted to take on?
Probably, there's big stuff, but one of the hardest things on the whole movie was one of the smallest things, and that was animating Feathers McGraw, because he was, like he was animated in the wrong trousers. We had to stay on an incredibly steady course, and only about 4 or 5 animators actually would volunteer to animate Feathers, because he's done with such precision, and that is the scale we're working with. So even close-ups of his face are done on that scale.
I'd say the hardest shot of the film is probably Feathers shaving. Literally the hardest shot in the film.
It was tricky, that one.
I think that was Ian Whitlock, superstar animator, and it's like 6 seconds long, 7 seconds of animation, and it's weeks of work. I mean, animation is slow anyway, but it was so painstaking for him because he's animating the character in the foreground and a real reflection. So it has to work. You can normally cheat stuff. There's nowhere to hide in that shot.
Yeah, we had to do a bit of digital work just to kind of mend the foam on his face afterwards.
That's what I actually wanted to know, is how much does CGI help make a movie like this now? And how much are you sort of like, we don't want to use CGI at all, but in this shot we kind of have to?
There's a difference between actual CGI, actual animation that's generated on computer.
For characters.
But no characters as such, just all the characters are stop motion like these. But we're open to using digital effects just like any movie does, fog, fire, things we can't do with clay, basically, and explosions, that kind of thing, and a lot of fixing afterwards. If a shot goes wrong or there's a bit of a fingerprint, we love the fingerprints. We ask the digital guys not to take the fingerprints off, because they can so easily do that.
But we had a very clear sort of starting point, was if we can do it in camera, then we will. And if we couldn't, then we look, and we're very lucky. We've got all of the latest digital production and post-production technology at our fingertips at the studio. And as filmmakers, I think we'd be foolish not to use every toy in the box to make the story we want up on the screen, as long as it fits the world which Nick established in the Wallace and Gromit world. So using technology,
stop motion,
to fit the stop motion, exactly. And so the water is a really good example. CG water has been around for quite a while, but it was always based on live action, real water. And it's only been in the last couple of years that the simulation engines that make the water have been malleable enough and clever enough to stylize it in a way that we can place it in a film like this and it to feel appropriate. Because even though the water I think it feels right in this film, if you put this water in a live action film, people go, whoever did that, you messed up. Because it's very, very stylized. And those kind of subtleties are not necessarily appreciated. Everyone thinks, oh, digital, you can do everything. It's not always the case. So we have been pushing those kind of boundaries as well.
So I'm curious, obviously a shot with the shaving takes more time to do. So how does it work out in terms of budgeting, where and when you're going to deploy those added resources to make certain shots like shine, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes it's an economic thing to speed up the stop motion. Like, for example, if a character is leaping through the air or even just running, it's faster for the animator, rather spend time hiding wires and fishing line or whatever, just to animate the figure on a rig and then paint the rig out later.
Yeah.
So there's often digital cleanup and like fixing stuff on almost every shot.
Yeah, but the production department, that's their whole reason for being, is figuring that stuff out. One of the big questions from our producer was this set piece is when we were sort of locking down our story reel, Act 3 is massive. Are you sure you want to put all of that effort and energy that's going to be required into that sequence? Because we are going to have to make some sort of efficiencies elsewhere in the film, and we said yes, we do. And so we did have to sort of cut our cloth accordingly, because it's the thing we are most short of was time, really. That's what gets you in the end, and so it's always a discussion. I mean, we always try, as directors, we'll push for more and more and more. That's kind of our jobs, and on the whole, everyone at the studio kind of gets behind making it happen, and will find a way. And actually, sometimes having limitations makes what you're setting out to do better, because it makes you really question, right, is this really important? Do we really need this in the film? And if we don't, then why are we doing it? And if it's just there for being fancy for fancy's sake, then let's just make what's the simple version. And the simple version's often either funnier, or the more direct way is often better.
So I love Wallace's inventions, but what is it like animating Wallace's inventions and figuring out what can we actually do? Is this an impossible shot, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I guess they are all impossible in some way, but because they're all bespoke, we can kind of make them do whatever we need anyway.
Yeah, so make them believable.
Yeah.
That they can, because they don't really work.
True.
Well, and that did catch us.
You're ruining it for me.
Yeah. So it's and so often it's not just the one thing. There might be several different models to do to make it look like it's one coherent event, but it's kind of some tricks cutting around.
I think the reboot-o-matic, as it was known, on the barge chase at the end.
Yeah,
that took a bit of working out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Getting
Don't sort of analyze that from an engineering point of view. 'Cause, we might have.
falls apart.
Yeah.
So how does it work in terms of test screenings or friends and family screenings when you're making one of these? At what point are you actually screening for people, and what feedback did you get after screening it that impacted the finished film?
Yeah, and this one was the first feature film I've worked on where we didn't really have audience test screenings. I guess because Netflix is basically a streamer. They were not. We did tests for ourselves, didn't we? We got like friends and family and people who were not familiar, like crew, family who were not familiar with the film, and we gave them a questionnaire, and they filled in when did it get boring, or when was it not funny, when was it funny. So sometimes you want to know when it is funny as well, so you don't chop it out. But it was off our own bat, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But can I just do a follow-up? And what condition of the film are you showing? Are you showing storyboards? Are you showing rough animatics? Like, where are you feeling comfortable that the people you're showing it to are going to understand enough of what you're doing that they can give you realistic feedback?
We had about probably 10 minutes of Act 1, so they could get an idea of where we were going with sort of production quality. And then the rest was fairly slick animatic story reel all the way through the whole film.
Yeah, you have to make sure the animatic looks good and in color, and otherwise there's no matter how much you explain that it's not going to be like this, it's still, you can tell there's like a lull in the audience when the animatic comes on.
And for some people, they just can't watch an animatic and engage with it. It just doesn't. For some people, it just doesn't work. Executives included. But you kind of have to go through that, and it's. I mean, for us, it's just such a natural way of progressing your idea. For us, it's a normal way of making a film, but for other people, it's a very esoteric experience because they're used to seeing finished films. Not, I promise it's going to be good. And we've kind of trying to explain what we're doing in a very rudimentary form.
If I can ask, what was the last sequence or scene that you ended up cutting out before like getting to animation? Because I'm assuming nothing was animated and then deleted. Or am I wrong about this?
Actually it was. Probably the scene that was mostly subject to those changes was the bit in the middle, where all the inventions are taken by the police and Gromit's on his own in the basement. We lost about 5 or 6 shots out of that, I think.
That were animated already.
That were animated really well.
But that's like that.
That was partly just the pacing in the middle was. It was a bit too complex for it or something. I can't quite remember quite why it happened now, but we had to cut some shots that were already done.
But otherwise, the most that ends up on the cutting room floor is the top and tail of the shot. So our animators will overshoot by 8 to 10 frames on the beginning and the end, and that doesn't sound like much, but that's nearly a best part of a second, and that's kind of a day's work. And we have to have that to allow the editor have at least a little bit of chance of getting a good cut in the edit and refining the show. And so that's unavoidable. But as Nick says, we lost about 5 shots, but we really tried to avoid that.
So besides those 5 shots, what was the last thing that you cut out, if you can remember, before getting to animation? Did you have a sequence or scene that came really close to being in the movie?
There probably were. It's really hard to remember. You go through so many different cuts. And
it's a long time ago.
You probably reboard everything about 20 times.
We had a little bit of an action sequence with some rowing boats on the canals, didn't we? That was in Tilf. Before we started sort of reining in the Act 3.
Yeah.
Because there was lots of sort of sight gags there. And what was important with Act 3 that Feathers was sort of in control, and then Gromit appeared to be in control, and then Feathers got control back, and it's a back and forth between them. Yeah. And we found if we put extra jokes in there, it sort of was a bit of a sidetrack, and it stopped it being about a tussle between the two of them. So we sort of focused the idea into
You
them.
always start by piling every idea in, every joke. And I remember there was on the British canals, you have these lock gates. We never actually boarded that, though, actually, did we?
No.
It was just an idea that was in the air. There was going to be a bit where they, in the middle of the chase, where they reach these lock gates and have to get out and do this winding, and well, the water levels go up. And
It's a very slow and tedious process.
It's going to be one of those, another joke like the fast and slow barge joke.
I think that was the thing. It was too similar to that, wasn't it?
It was really, and it was in danger of repetition. So, yeah.
I know there's a lot of Easter eggs in this movie, so let's talk about some of them. What do you want to tell the audience that just saw the movie, and what do you want to tell the audience that's watching the video online?
Well, there is a lot, and we do take every opportunity to put extra things in. Even on the day, you know, if someone comes up with something and we've got time to make a prop or something, we will have that made. I have a particular favourite, which is right at the end of the film when Feathers McGraw is on the train going away, and it says there's the Yorkshire border, Yorkshire Lancashire border, and on the sign it says, keep out, Yorkshire border, you keep out. And on the other side, it's Lancashire border, and it says, no, you keep out on the other side. So I like that.
Yeah.
And there's other things. So I'm from the south of England, and there are some very particular northern references which Nick had to educate me on. And one is that there's this kind of cake called Parkin cake. And it's so randomly sort of regional and colloquial that on the bridge when Mukherjee comes in, there's a big sign that says no parking, and that's on the border as well. So that means there's essentially it's saying no cake allowed to cross the border, but it's kind of in
a very
code.
local joke.
Very, very local joke. But I love it that it's such a sort of a specific thing.
That joke is for 5 people, and,
Yeah,
and
pretty
those
much.
5 people are going to lose their minds.
That's right.
Yeah. The whole of Yorkshire fell apart laughing seeing that on Christmas Day.
What about on the submarine?
Yeah. So, well, we didn't actually ever put a name plate on it, but we called it the Naughty Lass as a reference to the Nautilus, yeah.
I think that's been used somewhere else as well, I think.
Had it? Yeah. Oh, maybe that's why we weren't allowed to.
I can't remember what.
But it's all those kind of things that we have a lot of in-jokes, even within the production.
A lot of references, a lot of film references as well, you know, like Captain Nemo and, you know, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I don't know if anyone got that one of the barges, there's a town in the north of England called Accrington, and the barge was called the Accrington Queen. And I spent my childhood with my dad watching films like The African Queen. So that's a kind of a Lancashire version of that.
Are you at any point going to do like a list of all the various Easter eggs, or is it really up to the audience to find them all?
They should do. There's a couple which we made, and just because of the way the focus or the depth of field went, like when Wallace is at his piano kind of in a melancholy way playing, it's a bit meta, but playing his own theme tune. The music that's on there isn't the Four Seasons. I think it's Quattro Formaggi or something like that they put on there. So there's the 4 cheese suite of music. So things like that, which, I find them funny.
Shameless puns, yeah.
It might not seem like it, but we do police the puns. Yeah. And
I don't think you do.
No, we really do.
No,
there's some really
it doesn't
bad
look
ones.
like we do. Yeah. One thing that no one will ever spot, because they won't know, is when Feathers is hacking Wallace's computer, and the keys on the computer are like self-pressing, sort of thing, like in Ghost. Maybe it's a reference to Ghost. But the animator Raoul, he's spelt out his son's name on those keys.
Just for fun, just because he could, yeah.
This film is available on Netflix, which is really cool because it means everyone around the world can watch. Is it sort of nice to not have to worry about like the opening weekend box office? Can you sort of talk about, and the fact that your movie is available everywhere?
Yeah, but I have to pinch myself because, when I first made A Grand Day Out as a student, and Aardman helped me finish it, and now here it is, being shown on Netflix and the Golden Globes last night. It's amazing.
I mean, it does take the pressure off, because an opening weekend can be kind of made or broken by the weather. Sometimes it's, if it's a wet weekend, you'll get a bigger box office, or, so those kind of random events, it does take a layer of stress off, not having to have an opening weekend. But it's like 170 something countries around the world. I mean, like that, and that's amazing.
Yep. What do you think? Everyone in this room is a fan of stop motion movies, or at least I think they are. What do you think would surprise everyone to learn about making a stop motion film?
I think that it's not requiring patience. A lot of people say you must have a lot of patience. And actually, I think you only need patience when your mind is idle. And there is so much to do, whether you're an animator or a set dresser or the director. There's so much in your head that there's actually not enough time in the day to do what's in your head. You need other things, like you need to stay motivated, and you need maybe you need to be stubborn more than you do need patience. But I think that's the biggest thing. People say you must be really patient, be an animator of any kind, maybe not just stop motion. But I think that's the one.
It's our friends and families that need the patience, really, isn't it?
Yeah, just in general. Yeah,
it's so demanding, the whole thing.
3D printing has really helped animated films. Can you talk about what 3D printing has done for you guys?
Should I take this one?
Yeah.
We have a 3D printing lab. So we will use 3D printing for repetition of props. So we'll hand make the first prop, 3D scan it, and then replicate if we need to. But actually, that doesn't get used as much as the internal workings of the puppets. A lot of the frameworks, and actually the molds for casting are now 3D printed. So rather than making 3D components, we'll use 3D printing to be the master for the components. And so that for us, that's been the biggest thing. Is external pieces. I think Norbot's head is 3D printed. But I think that's the only components on the puppets externally that is pretty much on there.
How many 3D printers do you have at the office?
30 or so.
They used it quite a bit on Pirates, didn't they?
Yeah.
3D printed mouths.
And that was when the technology was in its infancy, and they were like car-sized things. And now they're whatever size you need them to be.
I think this is going to be my last question for you guys, so everyone can enjoy meeting you. What else are you guys working on at the office?
Well, we're always developing something back at the studio.
Hence the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, so there's things we can talk about and things we can't talk about. The things we can talk about is a new Shaun the Sheep television series in production.
Yeah, just finished, in fact.
Just wrapped.
Just finished shooting, yeah.
And is this Netflix? Is it what?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think it's
We haven't been involved in.
No, I don't know who that's.
So it's a company. Is it coming out this year?
Yes, it will be coming out this year. Yeah. There's an Aardman Pokemon collaboration in the pipeline. Can't say much more about that, but that has been announced.
I'm like, wait a minute. We need to pause right there. What? I've heard this Pokemon is kind of popular. Mm-hmm. I've heard this. Did they? Can you say did you go to them? Did they come to you? Like.
Pass. I don't know the answer to that, but there is something that we are making with Pokemon.
I haven't even seen any of it yet.
No, we've not seen any of it.
I know you won't answer. I'm just saying this sounds very cool.
Yeah, and what else have we got? Oh, so if you are aware of a character called Pingu that was around for many years, the rights holders of that intellectual property, Pingu, I don't like calling it intellectual property, it's an ugly thing, but the owners of Pingu came to Aardman and say, would you resurrect Pingu for us? So that will be going to production as well through Aardman.
Yes.
I don't know if you can say, is that like a short? Is it a movie?
It's preschool television series. Yeah.
Yes. It'll be Clash of the Penguins, I'm sure.
That's right.
Okay, well,
And there are some features, but we can't say what the features are.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll love them when it's.
yeah. My only question is: are people currently animating a feature that has been unannounced?
Not at this time.
So it's like this year, it's gearing up.
Oh, yeah. So we just finished in the studio. The Shaun the Sheep series went in, and I think they're literally striking that as we speak and preparing for whatever's coming next.
Yeah, in fact, we're just waiting for a green light, really, on it. Yeah. On the next thing.
On that note, I really want to say congratulations on your film, and thank you so much for doing this Q&A with us.